Hi guys, so as you can probably tell by the title, today I'll be going through all the plants that I bought for an upcoming terrarium build for my second Crested Gecko. And today I'll go through each plant, give you a brief description of it, where it's from, some of its cool features, and explain why I bought it for the terrarium. So let's kick things off with the African violet. Now this plant can be found in East Africa and has some pretty bizarre leaves. On the underside they're a nice deep purple colour, but to touch they're really fuzzy. It's really strange. But the great thing about the leaves is if you remove one, you can put it in dirt and eventually it will produce another plant. Now I chose this for the terrarium since it's different in texture, it can withstand the weight of a Crested Gecko, and it's a flowering plant so it adds colour to the terrarium. Quick tip though, if you want to keep this plant in bloom, pinch off any dead heads. Staying in Africa, our next plant comes from one of my favourite African islands, Madagascar. This is of course the Madagascar dragon tree. I also have one of these in Isla's tank and I usually refer to it as a dragon plant, but it's actually a tree. I chose this so that my gecko has something tall and sturdy to climb on. Plus dragon trees are known to be one of the easiest houseplants to take care of, and they love their leaves being sprayed with water, so it's kind of perfect for a Crested Gecko tank. Our next plant is from West Africa and has multiple different names, including the St. George's sword, the snake plant, and the mother-in-law's tongue plant. It's actually a type of succulent that does surprisingly well in terrariums, and it's great for Crested Geckos since its broad and strong leaves will easily support their weight. Now let's change continents and look at plants from Asia. The next plant I have comes from Vietnam and is called the Pilea, also sometimes known as the aluminium plant. And yes, I did just say it like that. Aluminum is so much easier to say, but over here we say aluminium. Yeah. It's weird. Anyway, the great thing about the Pilea is it thrives under grow lights like the jungle dawn light that I have, and it loves humidity, so I'm hoping it does well in this tank. Also, it grows like a bush, so hopefully it should give my gecko lots of coverage from the light in the day. One downside to this plant is it is prone to getting spider mites, and I did actually find one on this particular plant, so I had to remove the plant from the soil, run it under the tap, and then I repotted it, and thankfully I think it's now mite free. Staying in Southeast Asia, the next plant up is the lucky bamboo. Now I've heard the bamboo does really well in terrariums, plus it grows pretty quick, and I swear every day I get up and it's grown a little bit. I'm sure. Maybe it's just my eyes, I'm not sure. But it lives next to Isla's tank at the moment, so it is actually growing towards the jungle dawn light, which is awesome to see that the light is actually working, even for a plant outside the tank. Anyway, it came in this water capsule when I first got it, but I will be repotting it in soil. I know there's quite a bit of debate between whether you should keep them in water or soil, but since I don't have a water feature in a Crested Gecko's tank, I'm just going to put it straight in the soil, but I will also include some moss to help with humidity and retaining some water. Now let's look at Central and South American plants. Our first one up is the Anthurium, also sometimes known as the flamingo flower. It's quite obvious why I bought it. It's very colourful and very striking in appearance. These are slow growing plants, but apparently they thrive in humid conditions, so once again it's great for a Crested Gecko's tank. Next up we have epiphytic plants, which means they grow on other plants or trees, but unlike parasitic plants, they do not derive their nutritional requirements from the host tree or plant. Instead, they get everything they need from the air, rain, and sometimes debris that collects around them. So the first one up is a vanilla orchid. Now these can be found in countries such as Mexico and Guatemala, and Guatemala is literally one of my favourite words to say. I think it's a gua. Yeah, I love that name. Anyway, have you ever wondered where vanilla comes from? Well, it actually comes from orchids, these orchids. Now, the orchids flower and produce vanilla pods, but I don't expect this one to whilst it's in a terrarium, since they have to grow up to 10 foot before flowering. Yeah, they get massive in the wild. But anyway, I like this plant because it's a vining plant, it thrives in humid conditions, it's strong, and hopefully it will spread along the background of the tank. Now usually these are really expensive. I actually wanted to buy one last year, but it was about £18. But then I went to my local garden centre when it was kind of out of season, you know, the transition between winter and spring, and everything was so reduced I just had to get myself one. Next up we have another kind of orchid. I'm not 100% sure what type it is. All the label said was it was a double stem, which to me just means there's two in one. Now I'm still not 100% sure whether or not I'm going to add it into the tank, because I know from growing orchids before that the flowers kind of bloom and then they die off and you get like a stick for a while. So of course this couldn't be a main feature because it would just look like I have an old stick in the tank. The other problem with it is apparently some lizards can't resist the nectar of these plants because it's so sweet. So hopefully my gecko doesn't eat the flowers. If you've ever experienced that with your Crested Geckos, let me know. Now these are safe for Crested Geckos, but you don't see them in many terrariums because orchids tend to be really expensive. But it was Valentine's Day recently and these are really reduced, so obviously me loving a bargain, I just had to get one. And finally, our last two plants, they are of course bromeliads. I couldn't put together a terrarium without including bromeliads. Their crown acts as a natural water dish, they can support the weight of a gecko, and they add a nice pop of colour to the terrarium. This particular one as well is producing a pup, so there's definitely a future for this plant. Now I'm not 100% sure which species they are, but they kind of look like Guzmania and Sword. Nevertheless, I'm sure my gecko will love them. The last two plant related things I bought are moss. The first is carpet moss. I really wanted this to cover any bare areas of eco-earth. And the second is Zoomed terrarium moss, which is basically sphagnum moss. So yeah, they were all the plants I bought, and I will do a separate haul video for all the decorations and equipment I bought for the tank, since I'm pretty much making this tank from scratch. I'm actually making a background out of expanding foam and adding everything into that, so it's all very exciting, but I am just waiting on a few more things to arrive before I can make that video. And don't worry, I will film the entire progress and share it with you guys. Now a quick note about the plants before I go is make sure the plants aren't sprayed with anything like pesticides, and if you do buy them from a garden shop, a home shop, anywhere that doesn't specifically supply them for animals, make sure you change their soil to a safe soil such as eco-earth or plantation soil. Also, if you're interested, I've left a list of safe plants for Crested Geckos in the description box below. There's just a little link you have to follow and they're all there. Another plant I would recommend that I haven't been able to get my hands on for this particular terrarium is the Polka Dot Plant. These are also from Madagascar and are doing brilliantly in Isla's terrarium. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video and thank you very much for watching.